Welcome to my kitchen. Actually, welcome to my daughter's kitchen. My daughter's kitchen is in Virginia, and if I were home in my kitchen, I'd be in Texas. But I've been here for a couple of weeks helping out the family while my daughter studies for a big exam, and I'm delighted because right now she's on her way home from having been in Texas. She flew back to Texas to our home and stayed there so she could take the exam in Texas. And now she's on her way home and we don't have to give her up for more study time. It's behind us and I have a weekend left here to enjoy time with my daughter and her family where she's not downstairs with her nose in the books. But that's not part of this video. This video is so I can share with you something called handy chocolate syrup. It is a recipe that is both low in fats and low in carbs. Actually, no fat, no carb. It's what is known as a fuel pull recipe. I like fuel pull recipes that are low in carbs and fats because there's no fuel in them for my body to have to deal with, for my glucose to have to rise. And instead, if my body needs fuel when I eat a fuel pull meal, it is forced to turn inward and use the fuel that is stored on my body from previous meals. I call it munching on the muffin top. And thankfully, because of fuel pull meals as a starting point in my life, where I can take a fuel pull item like handy chocolate syrup that I'm going to show you in a second, and I can choose to add a fuel to it. I can choose to add fat to it or add carbs to it so that my body has that fuel to work with. But I like to start from fuel pulling as my base foundation, getting in plenty of protein and plenty of nutrients. Because if we don't feed our body enough protein and nutrients, then we're going to have food chatter in our mind, and our body's going to say to us, I need more. It doesn't even have to be a hunger in the pit of your stomach. It can just be you're having food thoughts. I need more, I need more, I need more. Well, your body is asking for more protein or more nutrients. So this little recipe, handy chocolate syrup, is a perfect thing to keep in your fridge on hand to use when you want to finish off a meal, regardless of whether it has a fuel of fat or carbs or both in it. When you want to finish off a meal with something sweet, but you don't need any more fuel. So I'm going to show you handy chocolate syrup. I made up a batch the other day so I would have it chilled to show you what the chilled result looks like. And then I'm going to show you making it, just putting the ingredients together, how quick it is, stirring it, and then showing you what you're looking for in the pot to know that you've reached the desired cooked effect so that you get this fudge sauce stuff. Now, when I put it in the jar, I moved the jar around and it coated the sides of the jar some, but the level of it is sitting right about here. So the batch that I made, the one full-size batch, I end up with half of a pint jar. And some people have made the handy chocolate syrup and didn't like it because it was thin and runny. But I want to show you what cooking does to handy chocolate syrup. If you have patience and you cook it long enough, you don't end up with something thin and runny. You end up with something thick and fudgy. I'm digging the spoon in and I'm getting resistance and I'm pulling out this thick fudgy stuff. This is not a runny chocolate syrup. This is a nice, thick, fudgy syrup. So if I wanted something sweet, I could just go take a spoonful of this. But I haven't broken fast yet today. I haven't had my breakfast, my break fast, my breakfast, breaking fast. That's what the word breakfast is, break fast. We should all have a time of fasting overnight where we go to bed at night at a decent hour to give our body the rest it needs and let our body rest and digest and clean up cells, because if we have unhealthy cells, we are unhealthy. Anyway, I want to show you handy chocolate syrup. And it does not have to be runny. It could be thick and fudgy and gooey and yummy. I have this tool to use after meals if I want, as a way to have something chocolatey to finish off my meals. And I can stir this into a glass of nut milk if I want, or a glass of kefir if I want to have a chocolate milk kind of drink. I can use this with sweetened yogurt, or I could put it on top of fruit if I want. Now, it is so thick that I'd probably want to warm it up a little bit and make it a little runnier, but I like it this way because I could just stuff a spoonful in my mouth and feel like I'm having a fudge sauce. Look at that! So when I want a sweet, I can dig into the jar. Now, this batch I'm going to make will fill up my jar. I'm going to set this aside. Okay, that is set aside, and now I'm going to just put in the simple ingredients that make handy chocolate syrup. I will also, in the description box, put a link to the original recipe that was shared on the Trim Healthy Mama Facebook public page, their fan page for the author's sisters. And if you don't want to use the link, I will type out the recipe in the description box, so you will have the typed out ingredients. I'll tell you the ingredients as I put them in. This is a public recipe, so I'm not violating copyright, and I'm giving you a wonderful tool if you have a sweet tooth, but you don't want to add more fuel to your body. If you've already eaten the food that you need for a day and you want something sweet and you happen to like chocolate. This recipe is very simple. It just takes a cup of water, half a cup of cocoa. I'm using a cup of allulose from this bag. This is a 5-pound bag. I buy it off Amazon. I'll put a link for that in the description box. You don't have to buy it from Amazon. You can find allulose. It's becoming more and more ubiquitous in the grocery stores. Just look for the ingredients on the bag or the container of allulose to say just allulose. Like, I can't give my one of my adult children anything with stevia in it because he has a ragweed allergy, and stevia is in the ragweed family, so it bothers him. I can't give my another family member xylitol because that causes tummy rumbles and discomfort and not a pleasant outcome. I can't give one family member erythritol because they don't like the taste of it and they don't have a good reaction to it. So to make everybody happy, I discovered allulose. I will put links in the description box. There's a PubMed research article that I will link that allulose actually has blood sugar lowering abilities. It is good for a person who wants to manage their blood sugar to use, and it tastes and cooks the most like sugar of any of the available non-sugar sweetening options out on the market. The only difference is it's not as sweet as sugar. It's about 70% as sweet as sugar. So you need to keep that in mind and just taste your recipes as you make them to make sure that they reach the desired sweetness level that is good for your palate. Okay, I'm going to put the ingredients in, and then as this cooks, I will have the camera closer to the pot so you can see it from its thin, watery stage, not cooked, and as it cooks down. I won't make you sit through the whole cooking thing. I'll just show you shots as it cooks and thickens so you can see, okay, this is what I'm looking for when I make this recipe. So I'm going to dump in a cup of water, and I'm going to dump in half a cup of cocoa. I'm using an organic cocoa. At home in Texas, I have a big bag of organic cacao powder, and I like to use that. But because I think cacao powder is a little healthier than just cocoa powder. So this is half a cup of organic cocoa powder. This is a whole cup of allulose. I'm going to dump that in. I'm going to use a teaspoon of vanilla, and typically vanilla bottles come with a cap that will measure out a teaspoon, so I just use the cap. And when making chocolate items, it helps to balance the flavor if you use a little bit of salt. I'm going to be sprinkling in by sight about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I think that will do it. All right, I'm gonna set these things aside and I'll start the cooking process, and you'll be able to see into the pot from this point onward. But right now, what I have in here is 1 cup of water, a half a cup of cocoa, a cup of allulose, a teaspoon of vanilla, and just a little sprinkling of salt. 1/4 teaspoon is what the recipe calls for. I just eyeball it and sprinkle some salt in. I like to use mineral salt. So here it is, and I'm going to turn the heat on and get the flame so it's not going over the sides of the pot, and get it ready to begin stirring. And I will stir it together so it's uniformly mixed. That's not hard. Everything goes together pretty easily. Just takes some patience and gentle stirring. And once I get this stirred all together and you can see the consistency of this, then I'll pause and I'll show you clips as this begins to thicken up. And while I'm getting to the completely mixed state, I want to go back to the idea of starting my meals from the premise of low in fat and low in carbs. Fuel pulling meals, meaning there's not fuel provided in the thing I'm eating until I decide to add it in. So I have a whole collection of recipes. I think I've got 160 different recipes, maybe more, that fall in the category of breakfast and lunch and dinner and snacks and desserts and drinks and shakes. And I have a category called sauces and salad dressings. And I have a category for bread. In my bread category alone, I have 9 different options for making a bread item that is low in carbs and low in fats. And then all the links are public-facing links so that anyone can use my resource. I will link a resource sheet in the description box. It's a Google sheet, and anybody with the link has access to the document, to view it and to use it, not to change it. You can't comment. I mean, you can't edit it, but you can comment on the document if you want. You can alert me if there's something that isn't working with it or whatnot, but it is a Google sheet that is available publicly if you have the link. And on there is my premise for how I eat. My goal is to have management of my weight and my wellness, but still be able to eat healthy, good food and food that I enjoy. And I've created this document so that anyone could get started with this way of life, regardless of whether or not they have the cookbook for any of the recipes. I think there are 5 different Trim Healthy Mama cookbooks, and it could be frustrating to someone to be told, oh, it's in such and such a cookbook, but you don't have the cookbook, so how do you get access to the recipe? I'm giving you access to recipes that are all public-facing, that all fit the criteria of being low in carbs, low in fats, so that you then can decide to add on something that is a carbohydrate source in your meal or something that is a fat source in your meal. But I really like starting from a foundation of fuel pulling recipes, giving me the flexibility to go either way. And my priority is to get in plenty of protein with every meal that I eat and plenty of nutrients with every meal I eat. And you can get lots of nutrients without having to load up on carbs or fats. You can get lots of protein without having to load up on fat with your protein. Many protein sources come with an embedded fat, but there are plenty of protein sources that are lean protein that don't have fat included in them. These recipes all start with that premise of low in fat, low in carbs, but you need to be mindful to have plenty of protein and plenty of nutrients so that your body is getting what it needs. Otherwise, you're going to have fuel chatter in your head. You might not be hungry, but you're going to have thoughts about food. And what's going on there is your body is saying to you through having these food thoughts, I didn't get enough protein, or I didn't get enough nutrients. Go find something else to eat. And what do? We end up eating junk or things that are loaded with more fat or more carbs than we need in a day. So we're not accessing our stored fat. Now, I've continued to talk, so we've gotten to a rolling boil, and I need to turn this down because I don't want to lose my ingredients all over the stovetop. I thought I was going to do clips for you of these stages, but I'm talking still. But I think what I have to say is going to resonate with a lot of people who are walking around with stored fuel on their body that they're not accessing. When I see someone that is overweight, I don't think, oh, they're fat, they're ugly. I think, oh, that poor person, they don't know how to access their stored fuel. And they just keep adding to their storages, and they're walking around with all this resource of fuel padded around them, all over them. And if they only knew how to manage their food choices so that their body then has a chance to dig in and munch on the muffin top, clean that up, and, have a healthier body. Because if you're doing that, you're also cleaning up your cells. You're not overburdening your cells with all this extra fuel stored all over your body. Anyway, my resource sheet will be linked in the description box, and I hope that it serves someone. If just one person is helped by using that information in the description box, I will feel very satisfied, very blessed that I was able to make a positive difference for someone, that, I gave them a tool that helped change the way they were managing their weight and wellness so that they began to feel successful instead of feeling like a victim to their own body. All right, I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit because I do want to get it cooking along here. Maybe you'll get to see the whole process since I'm feeling like in such a chatty mood. I don't want to say Chatty Cathy because I have a friend whose name is Kathy, and I appreciate her conversations. I appreciate listening to her and her observations about life. And I don't think of her as Chatty Cathy. I think of her as my friend Kathy that blesses my life by being in it. She's in one of the Marco Polo groups that I'm in. She's also in DataDrivenFasting community with Marty Kendall of OptimizingNutrition.com. I'm going to link all this stuff in the description box to help you find OptimizingNutrition.com, to help you find Marty Kendall, to help you find the blog post that he does about how to treat a glucose meter as a fuel gauge. That has been the magic for me. In 2013, I put aside 17 years of low-carb living when I found Trim Healthy Mama, and I learned how to use carbohydrates in a healthy way. But then menopause came along, and my trimness started to leave me. I started to get padded up with menopause belly. I started to feel like a victim of my own body because I was doing all the things, all the rules of eating every 3 to 4 hours, separating my fuels, using special menus designed for stubborn losers, or even the desperation of following something called a fuel cycle, where you specifically cycle through 2 days of low carb, low carb eating, and you cycle through 2 days of low fat eating, low fat and low carb eating, called a fuel pull, and you cycle through 2 days of using so I'm getting myself confused here. Low carb are the S meals, and low fat are the E meals, and FP are the fuel pull meals. Each of them is without something. My favorite are the fuel pull meals if I use enough protein and nutrients in it. And then, but a lot of people are very fond of the S meals, and those are the ones that are satisfying meals fueled by fat, so they're really low in carbohydrate, and they have protein and fats and nutrients. And the E meals are the ones that a lot of people struggle with. They're the ones that are fueled with energizing carbohydrates, and the fats are really, really low. But if they're not using enough protein in that meal and they're not using enough nutrients, that meal doesn't keep them satisfied. So they're dissatisfied with E meals. That tends to be the leaning in some of the, if I'm talking in terms of generalities. Okay, we are getting thicker, but it is still not the thickness that I want. And I can also tell by quantity that I have more than a cup of liquid there. So maybe that's the other clue you need to know, is when I have this cooked down to the thickness that I want, I end up with, that's about a cup, because this is a pint jar, and a pint is 2 cups, and I have the jar filled halfway. I know that there's lots of chocolate stuff around the edges, and I didn't leave the sides clean and clear, but there's a cup of the handy chocolate syrup cooked down almost to a fudge sauce. Well, not almost, it is a fudge sauce. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just trying to get this cooked down thick enough so that I have about 1 cup of the sauce, syrup, fudge sauce left in the pot. And it's giving me a thickened result. Now, one thing I probably ought to do at some point is actually use a thermometer so I could tell what temperature I reach to. But I haven't reached that point of particularness. I just do this by sight, by eye. And even if this one isn't quite as thick as that batch, some would say, oh, you went too far on that, you made it too thick. But I make it the way I like it, and I'm showing you how I like it, so maybe you can make it this way too, and you will have a better result than one of the ladies in the Marco Polo group says, I don't like candy chocolate syrup. It is runny and thin and not satisfying to me. And so she's actually the inspiration for me to make this video. So Tanya, this video is dedicated to you. And I hope that seeing this sauce made makes a world of difference in how you see it, because now you have seen it. All right, I think that is good enough right there. It's probably just a little more than a cup, but it's definitely thickened, and this is very thickened, so I know that I'm going to get something between a little bit thinner than this and this. and I have reached my goal, and you got to see the whole thing. I didn't do this part of the cooking in clips. You saw it from watery to thickened. So I'm going to turn this off. I don't want to scorch my chocolate by not paying attention and keeping it moving. So I'm going to let it stop, and then we'll pour it in the jar. And this video will be done. So here we go, the in the jar process. Now see, right now it's at a very nice thickness, but because of chilling and cooling, it will thicken up even more. And I'm going to kind of scrape out. Sometimes I would use a spatula and just get every little bit that I could and not leave any residue in the pan. But I don't want to cut off the video now since I've kept it running. So I'll just kind of do it with a spoon. That's enough. And then let's see what happens. Oh, the top of the jar is hot. And the bottom of the jar is cold. And now I am able to stir the two together because the top batch is so hot, it is softening the bottom very chilled batch from my making this yesterday and not recording it. Actually, I did record it and my recording failed. I thought I had the record button on a couple times when I didn't. And so I thought, okay, well, we'll just use this first batch as the sort of on a cooking show, they always have a batch made to show you. They pull it out of the oven like it was magically made in seconds when they just made it ahead of time. So think of this as that. I made a batch ahead of time so you could see it. And there's my daughter walking through the door. I hear the door, so that's got to be her. I'm so excited to have her home. I hope it's her. She took a very major exam, and I have been here in Virginia for over 3 weeks now so that she could focus on studying around work life. And I basically stood in and became the chief cook and bottle washer. I became their Alice, like on the Brady Bunch. I cooked all the meals and I did all the laundry and I helped around the edges with child needs. But now that is all behind us. I don't have to know, okay, can't visit with the daughter. She's got to go down in the basement and study. Thankfully, it's behind us. So now we just wait until close to Christmas to find out those test results. Sorry about the squeaky bottom of the jar. Oh, she's knocking to be let in. Okay, I guess I must have the deadbolt. I'm going to go let her in, and that's the end of this video.